Hello, my name is Lavena Maris. For years, I thought being a good wife meant staying quiet. Until every Monday night, my husband came home, not to love me, but to punish me for the sake of his mistress. He'd hit me, then whisper into the phone, "Monday nights belong to Solar." I stayed, even when he spat in my face, called me Barren, even when my mother-in-law laughed and said, "What kind of woman can't give a man a son?" But then, when the truth about that pregnancy came out, everything changed. What do you do when the people who promise to protect you are the ones trying to erase you? Would you stay silent or set the whole thing on fire? It always starts around 7:45 p.m. on Mondays, like clockwork. I hear his car pull into the gravel driveway. The engine cuts, the door slams, then silence. That kind of silence that wraps around your lungs like a belt, tight, heavy, and suffocating. I sit at the edge of the bed in our dimly lit bedroom, staring at the floral wallpaper I once thought was charming. Now, it's just another reminder of how nothing in this house belongs to me anymore. Not even the walls. My name's Lavena Maris. I'm 38. I used to be a school teacher before life shifted and scraped off the soft parts of me. These days, I'm a wife in name only. And every Monday night, my husband reminds me of exactly what that name is worth. He walks in, the scent of whiskey and expensive cologne hits the air first, Solar's brand, not mine. His boots click against the hardwood floor as he tosses his keys on the console with a little more force than necessary. That sound is my cue. He's already mad. I brace myself. "I told you," he growls as he walks into the room. "Solar likes the towels folded a certain way. Why is that so damn hard for you to understand, Lavena?" I don't reply. I learned a long time ago that silence is the only thing that doesn't make it worse. He moves toward me, slow at first. His face is tight, lips drawn, nostrils flared. He's wearing the shirt I ironed this morning. That irony doesn't escape me. His hand lifts, and then comes the first hit, flat across the side of my face. My body follows instinct more than thought, crumpling to the floor as my ear rings and vision narrows. My cheek burns, but I don't cry. I haven't cried during it in a while. I think once the tears dry up, your soul just sort of backs away from the surface. "You think you're still in control of anything?" he shouts, standing over me now. "You think just because your name's on the damn mail you matter in this house?" Another blow, this one to the ribs. My body twists from the impact. "Monday nights belong to Solar," he spits. "I'll show you who's boss in this house." He spits on the floor, literally. And then he delivers the line that always comes, like some twisted punchline to a joke only he thinks is funny. "You're barren. Worthless." Then he's gone. Just like that. Storms out the door like a man who's just handled a chore. No guilt, no glance back, nothing. I lie there on the cold hardwood floor, trying to remember what my life used to feel like before this routine became normal. There's blood in my mouth. I taste metal. I reach for the nightstand and pull myself up slowly. My body aches, not just from tonight, but from months of this, years maybe. Time gets fuzzy when pain becomes routine. I stumble toward the bathroom. Each step feels like walking through wet cement. I flick on the light, and the reflection looking back at me makes my stomach turn. My left eye's starting to swell. Blood trickles from the corner of my lip. My hair is matted, frizzy at the edges. I used to brush it every night. Now I can't remember the last time I cared to. I dab at the blood with a tissue and press a cold washcloth against my face. The silence settles in again. He's not home anymore. And then, his voice echoes from the hallway that connects to the downstairs office. I freeze. He didn't leave. "Hey, baby," I hear him say, his tone syrupy, soft, nothing like the barking voice from minutes ago. "Yeah, no, she's fine. She won't bother us anymore. I made sure of it." And then, laughter. His laughter. That laugh I hadn't heard in months, maybe years. The kind of laugh he used to save for me, the one that used to mean something. I lean against the wall, my breath catching somewhere between my chest and throat. It's not the violence that finally cracks something inside me tonight. It's the sound of his joy when talking to another woman. Solar. Her name is everywhere now, on his lips. in the gifts that arrive at the house, on the receipts I find in his pockets. She's a shadow in every room, even though I've never met her. But tonight, she might as well be standing next to me in this bathroom, watching me hold ice to my face while her perfume clings to his skin. I sit on the edge of the bathtub and stare at the tile floor. Each little square feels like a cage. My house feels like a cage. My marriage feels like solitary confinement, with weekly assaults. My mind drifts back to the girl I was 10 years ago, the girl who thought love could fix anything, who believed in loyalty, who thought pain was something temporary, something you could outlast if you were patient enough. That girl is long gone, and in her place stands someone else, not stronger yet, but harder, someone quieter, but not because she has nothing to say, someone who knows that if she wants to survive, she'll have to play the long game. I turn the bathroom light off and shuffle back toward the bedroom, every step echoing the weight of tonight's truth. This isn't just my marriage breaking, it's me, my value, my role, my dignity, all being bartered, negotiated, erased. I sit at the edge of the bed again, the same place I sat earlier. Only now, something's different. I touch the swollen side of my face, I close my eyes, I breathe in the silence, and then I whisper into the darkness, "So this is what being invisible looks like." The sun crept into the room like it wasn't sure if it was welcome. Pale light pressed through the sheer curtains, brushing over the bruises on my cheek like it was trying to apologize. I didn't move right away. Lying there, cocooned in the silence of a house too quiet for its size, I tried to remember when mornings didn't feel like recovery missions. My body ached in all the familiar places. Ribs tender, shoulder stiff, lip cracked, but it was the hollowness inside that made it hard to breathe. I turned toward Corvin's side of the bed. The sheets were untouched. He never came back after the call last night. His pillow still carried the scent of her. Not mine. Not laundry detergent or his cologne, no. That saccharine designer sweetness that clung to her every time he came home late. I didn't know what brand it was, but I could pick it out of a department store lineup blindfolded. I sat up slowly, the sheets dragging along my legs, and placed my feet on the floor like I was waiting for the world to give me permission to start the day. It didn't. In the hallway, I could hear the faint clink of porcelain and the low hum of the coffee machine. That meant one thing. Eudora was awake. I tied the sash on my robe, the one with fraying seams and a stain I couldn't bleach out, and stepped into the hallway. Every step reminded me I was walking inside someone else's kingdom, and I was a guest overstaying my welcome. Eudora stood in the kitchen in her usual posture, perfectly erect, her hands gently wrapped around a porcelain coffee cup, not a hair out of place. She wore her white robe, the one with embroidered initials that weren't mine, and slippers that made no sound when she moved. She turned slightly when she saw me. Her eyes dropped to my cheek. The swelling had come in full overnight. I hadn't bothered to cover it up. What for? Her mouth curled, not quite a smile, something crueler. "Makeup can't hide weakness, dear," she said, as casually as if she were commenting on the weather. I didn't answer. I walked to the fridge, grabbed a carton of orange juice, and poured a glass. My hand shook slightly. Not from fear, just rage without a place to go. She set her cup down with a gentle click and added, "If you had given him a child, maybe he'd stay home." The juice hit my tongue, sour and warm. I swallowed hard and looked at her. "You think I wanted this?" I asked, not expecting an answer. "You think I chose to not have children?" She took a slow sip, her eyes never leaving mine. "A woman's worth is her womb, Levena. Don't act surprised he strays." I walked out of the kitchen before I said something I couldn't unsay, or worse, something she could twist into another accusation. Back in the bedroom, I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, exhaling so hard it hurt. I sat at my vanity, not to fix myself, but to feel like there was something left of me to sit with. The mirror was brutal. I didn't look like a wife. I looked like a mugshot. Red eyes, split lip, bruised cheek, and still, somewhere underneath all that, the woman who used to believe in vows. I powered on my phone, not to call anyone. I had no one to call, but to escape into someone else's curated life for a moment. As I scrolled, my thumb stopped dead on a sponsored post, a dealership gala. Corvin stood center frame, sharp suit, proud smile. But it wasn't the suit or the car in the background that hit me. It was the woman beside him. She wore red, a dress that clung in all the places that begged for attention. Her hair was perfect, her skin flawless. She leaned into him with familiarity, confidence. She knew she belonged next to him now. But what made my heart seize wasn't her smile. It was the necklace, my necklace, the one Corvin gave me for our 5th anniversary. A one-of-a-kind piece he said reminded him of me, delicate, classic, unforgettable, now wrapped around her neck like it was always meant to be there. I opened my jewelry drawer. It was a reflex. I already knew. I dug through boxes, velvet pouches, even the side pockets. It was gone. He didn't even bother to replace it. He just took it. That necklace wasn't about the money. It was about memory, about who we used to be, or at least who I thought we were. And now, she wore it like it was hers. Not stolen. Given. I stared at the photo again. His arm was around her waist, his face turned toward hers, eyes soft, mouth caught mid-laugh. He never laughed like that with me anymore. Hell, maybe he never really did. Maybe I just imagined it. I tossed the phone on the bed and stood up. I didn't cry, not this time. Instead, I walked to the closet and pulled out a box I hadn't opened in years. Old photos, anniversary cards, post-it notes he used to leave me on the fridge, back when I mattered, back when being a wife didn't feel like wearing chains disguised as pearls. One card caught my eye. It was from our 2nd anniversary. "Even on your worst days," he'd written, "you're my best decision." I stared at the handwriting for a long time. Then I ripped it in half. And then again. And again. Until it was confetti in my hands. This wasn't grief. This was awakening. I went back to the mirror. The same face stared back, but something behind the eyes had shifted. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. But I knew this much. Next Monday wouldn't be like the last. Not if I had anything to say about it. By the time Wednesday rolled around, I was done pretending the world outside didn't match the war inside me. The sky was overcast, swollen with the kind of clouds that held back rain like secrets. The air carried a stillness that made every sound in the house, every creak, every sigh, feel louder than it should. Corvin hadn't come home since Monday night. Not that I expected him to. He had stopped offering excuses months ago. Late meeting, client dinner, working late, they all dried up, just like our conversations. Now, he just didn't show up, and I was supposed to take the hint. I moved slowly through the house that morning, a mug of lukewarm coffee in hand, glancing at the photos on the wall like they belonged to someone else. The smiling faces of our wedding day, our 2nd anniversary, his promotion celebration, all of them frozen in time, mocking me now. Avoiding my phone became a habit lately. Text messages were never from him. Voicemails were just background noise from doctors reminding me about checkups I hadn't made, bills I didn't remember signing, and friends I no longer had the energy to lie to. So instead, I cleaned. The one thing I could still control in a world where everything else had been stripped from me. I opened the bedroom closet to organize some old sweaters and pushed aside a stack of shoe boxes. That's when I saw it, tucked way in the back, hidden behind an old suitcase we never used anymore. A notebook. Plain cover. Beige. No markings. But when I picked it up, my name was on the front in handwriting eerily similar to mine. Confused, I flipped it open. Page after page, I found journal entries dated months back. Entries describing me, only not as I knew myself. They painted me as unhinged, paranoid, jealous, controlling. One entry detailed how I screamed at Corvin for no reason and broke a dish. Another claimed I hid his keys so he'd miss a meeting. My stomach twisted. I hadn't written a word of it. It looked like my handwriting, but it wasn't mine. My fingers trembled as I flipped through more pages. Whoever wrote this knew enough about me to mimic my voice, but twisted every detail. It read like a legal script, a narrative that, taken on its own, would make me look like a dangerous woman. I sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the notebook limp in my hands. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was strategy. They weren't just trying to get rid of me. They were building a case. One where I'd be the villain, unfit, unstable, a woman who needed to be handled. I thought back to a conversation I'd had with Eudora just last week. She'd brought up therapy, casually, like she was suggesting a new hairdresser. "You've been so tense lately," she'd said, spooning sugar into her coffee with deliberate slowness. "Maybe talking to someone would help. Sometimes grief makes us unpredictable." Grief. She meant infertility, of course, the ghost child I couldn't give her son. The child she mentioned so often I half expected her to set a place at the dinner table for it. Back in the present, I shut the notebook and slid it into the drawer of my nightstand. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet, but I knew I wasn't going to leave it there. I was beginning to understand something terrifying and necessary. I wasn't losing my place in this family. I had already lost it. Mid-afternoon, I walked into the kitchen to put away some dishes. The clink of glass and porcelain gave my mind a rhythm to follow, better than letting it spiral. Corvin's briefcase was sitting on the counter, slightly open. A stack of envelopes peeked from the inner pocket, one of which had fallen halfway out. I wasn't snooping. I told myself that. I pulled it free. Glossy, thick cardstock, the kind you use for weddings or charity galas. My name wasn't on the envelope, but I opened it anyway. Baby shower invitation. Join us in celebrating Solar Virel and the future of the Hale legacy. The words blurred. The event was this Sunday. Location, our house. Not a banquet hall, not a hotel. Our house, without me. I stared at the lettering until the shape of the words no longer made sense. My name wasn't anywhere on the invite. No mention of a co-host. No suggestion that I was still the woman in this home, the woman legally married to the father of the supposed child. They were hosting a celebration for the woman replacing me. Inside the house I cleaned, in the dining room I decorated, under the roof that still technically belonged to both of us. My hands clenched, crumpling the edge of the invitation. I could feel my pulse in my throat, in my fingertips, behind my eyes. Everything inside me wanted to scream, to smash every dish in the kitchen, to burn that invitation and watch it curl into ash on the stove. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because that would make me exactly the woman they were writing about in that fake diary. Instead, I straightened the invitation and placed it gently on the table. I looked around the kitchen. My kitchen. I touched the counter I picked out, the tile I fought to afford, the cabinets I painted when Corvin said, "Do whatever you want with it." He never meant it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to a storm outside that never quite arrived. And then, something shifted in me. I got up, pulled out my laptop, and opened my email. I started forwarding messages, old conversations, anything that hinted at his affairs, his absence, his negligence. I took photos of the fake diary, screenshotted the baby shower invite. I was documenting a crime scene. I didn't know where this would go yet, but I knew I couldn't play the quiet wife anymore. Not when they were using silence to destroy me. They wanted me gone, fine, but they'd have to fight for it, and they'd learn something about the woman they thought they could erase. I was being replaced, and now I needed to replace their silence with proof. I didn't sleep much Wednesday night. By Thursday morning, I felt like I'd aged a year in a single day. But I didn't let that slow me down. The old version of me, quiet, compliant, hopeful, would have stayed in bed and told herself she was overreacting. That version was gone. What remained was someone exhausted, yes, but clear, sharpened. I spent the early hours combing through old emails, screenshots, anything that hinted at deception. But this wasn't about catching him cheating anymore. It was bigger, more calculated. He wasn't just betraying me, he was trying to erase me. Friday morning arrived with a slow drizzle that turned Charleston's sidewalks slick and gray. The air outside felt heavy, matching the weight inside me. I moved through the kitchen with quiet purpose. I'd ordered a tiny recording device earlier in the week, and it had arrived yesterday afternoon. I unboxed it at the kitchen table, read through the instructions twice, and tested it with a few fake conversations just to be sure it worked. It was smaller than a tube of lipstick and slid neatly behind the decorative air vent cover near the dining room wall. From that spot, it had a clear earshot of the kitchen, the breakfast nook, and the entrance to the hallway, where Eudora loved to linger with her concerns. I spent the morning cleaning like I usually did, Only this time I left the front door unlocked and pulled my car out of the driveway to make it look like I had left. I walked a block, circled back through the alley, and waited behind the garage. It was risky, yes, but I needed truth. Not suspicion, not hunches. Truth. Around 11:45, I saw them. Corvin's car pulled in. Solar stepped out first, dressed like she was going to a luncheon, not a secret meeting with a married man and his mother. Eudora greeted her at the door with a smile so wide it made my stomach tighten. I crouched near the back door and waited, heart pounding. After 20 minutes, I slipped in quietly, just long enough to shut the back door behind me. Then I crept upstairs, tucked myself into the small linen closet with the air vent that connected to the kitchen below. I couldn't hear every word perfectly, but the recorder would catch the rest. Solar's voice rang through first, light, amused, and utterly confident. "I'm serious," she said. "We need to get her out before the baby shower. If she throws a scene, it ruins everything." "I agree," Eudora chimed in. "The girl's not well. No children, no support system. She isolates herself. A 72-hour hold isn't a scandal. It's concern." Corvin's voice was lower, harder to hear. But then he said something I'll never forget. "The judge will believe us. We're respected. She's just tired. People will understand." I felt sick. Not surprised. Sick. Like everything I feared was not only real, but rehearsed. They weren't guessing how to remove me. They'd already decided. They just needed the right moment to execute it. When they left, I waited until I heard the engine fade down the block before stepping out of the closet. My knees were stiff, my back sore, but I had what I needed. That evening, after a long, slow shower, I waited for Corvin to come home. He arrived around 8 p.m. smelling like a mix of steakhouse and aftershave. I said nothing as he walked past me in the hallway. He didn't even acknowledge my presence. I counted the minutes until I heard the shower running. That was my window. I slipped into the office, careful not to make a sound. His laptop sat on the desk, open, screen glowing. I tapped the touchpad. No password prompt. Rookie mistake, Corvin. I opened the browser, went straight to the bank website, and logged into our joint account. My name was still on it, at least legally. And then I saw it. Thousands of dollars spent over the past 6 months. Jewelry, hotel stays, spa visits in cities I'd never stepped foot in. There was even a recurring payment labeled Private Concierge Wellness that I didn't recognize. One transaction stopped me cold. A $2,100 charge to a women's clinic 3 years ago, under my name. I blinked at the screen. That couldn't be right. I'd never been to that clinic, never even heard of it. But someone had used my insurance information to pay for it. The details matched my personal profile, but not my medical history. A sickening realization formed in the pit of my stomach. Someone had been pretending to be me, or using my name for procedures I knew nothing about. I copied the statement, downloaded the PDF, and emailed it to myself. Then I took photos of the screen on my phone just in case. I backed out of the browser, closed the laptop, and returned to the bedroom before Corvin turned the water off. When he entered the room, he gave me a brief glance and said, "You should get some sleep. You've been looking worn out lately." I didn't respond, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. That night, I opened a new folder on my computer. I labeled it simply, Evidence. Inside, I began organizing files, photos of the diary, screenshots of the baby shower invite, bank records, audio files from today's conversation. I wasn't angry, not in the way I used to be. I wasn't panicking either. I was preparing. They were scripting my downfall. But I was about to rewrite the ending. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They thought wrong. I didn't wait for the storm to clear. I let it pour through me. Let it wash away the old reflexes. Stay quiet. Be still. Don't push. Saturday morning came, and I didn't flinch when I looked in the mirror. I didn't reach for concealer. The bruises along my jaw, the split on my lip, they stayed. They were mine now, not to hide, but to wear like armor. I put on a plain black blouse and jeans, no jewelry, no perfume. I wanted Corvin and Eudora to see what they had done, without distraction, without disguise. Let them sit across from the damage and not call it anything else. I walked downstairs slowly, each step on the hardwood floor deliberate. The house was quiet except for the faint clinking of dishes coming from the kitchen. Eudora sat at the breakfast table, stirring her coffee with that ever-graceful hand of hers, wearing the same pearl-button cardigan she wore on holidays and funerals. When she saw me, she gave a polite nod. Nothing more. As if we were distant cousins passing in a church hallway. Corvin looked up from his plate, expression unreadable, and said flatly, "You look like hell." I kept walking. I stopped just short of him, leaned in slowly, and without a word, kissed his cheek. When I pulled back, a smear of blood, fresh from the cut he'd left the night before, marked his skin like a scarlet signature. He froze. Eudora's spoon paused mid-stir. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't speak. I stood there long enough to watch him reach up and touch his face. When he saw the red on his fingertips, his eyes flicked to mine with a glimmer of something I hadn't seen in him in years. Fear. I leaned in slightly and whispered, "So do you. You just can't see it yet." Then I walked away. No slamming doors, no screaming, just silence, heavy as steel. I spent the rest of the morning running errands. I needed more printer ink, paper, flash drives, small things that felt monumental in the larger plan I was forming. I stopped by the store, nodded at people who didn't recognize me, and moved through the aisles like a woman on a mission. At the grocery store, I ran into Ms. Lita, an older friend of Eudora's from their church circle. She had always been kind to me in a subtle, quiet way, the kind of Southern woman who knew how to keep things to herself but never stopped noticing. She touched my arm lightly. "Levena, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say this, but you deserve to know." I turned toward her, startled. "Know what?" She glanced around, then leaned in close. "Solar's not just some girl, she's Eudora's." I blinked. "Her what?" "Her daughter." I thought I'd misheard her. "She had her in college," she went on, voice low, "back before she met Corvin's father. It was a scandal, so the baby was adopted out. But they stayed in touch through a lawyer. Solar came back last year. Eudora brought her in, slow and quiet." I took a shaky breath. "She's been grooming her, Lavina, not just to steal Corvin, but to replace you." I nodded slowly, not sure if I was shaking from shock or from the confirmation of what I'd already suspected in my bones. Back home, I stood in the doorway for a long moment before stepping inside. The house felt colder somehow, despite the spring sun cutting through the windows. This wasn't just infidelity. This was a legacy play, a woman who had waited her entire life to reintroduce her secret child, a husband willing to rewrite his family just to preserve a lie, and a mistress with blood ties and quiet permission to step into the shoes I had spent a decade filling. I walked into the living room and looked around, not with sentimentality, but with calculation. This wasn't just my house, it was the last place I had a voice. I pulled the folder from my bag and opened it on the coffee table. Audio files, bank statements, insurance fraud reports, photos of the fake diary, a copy of the baby shower invitation, and now, added to that, a note on Eudora's adoption record. I had called the courthouse in a neighboring county and confirmed it myself. Solar's birth certificate listed no father, but the mother's maiden name matched Eudora's. They thought they were being clever. They forgot who signed the mortgage on this house. I pulled up my laptop, logged into the security system, and reset the user codes. From now on, only my fingerprint unlocked the front door. Then I drafted an email. Subject: for when you think I'll be silent. Attached: every file, every piece of evidence, and a line of text that simply read, "You can replace a wife, but not the truth." I didn't hit send yet, not because I wasn't ready, but because I knew when to strike mattered more than what I struck with. Let them enjoy their baby shower tomorrow. Let them think I've disappeared. Let them believe they've already won. They haven't met the version of me that doesn't beg to be believed. They haven't met the woman who documents everything. I didn't need to raise my voice. The blood on his face was louder than any scream. The morning after the blood-smeared kiss passed without drama. Corvin kept to himself, Eudora barely made eye contact, and the entire house felt like it was holding its breath. But I wasn't interested in breathing the same air they used to dismiss me. Sunday had arrived, the day they picked to parade their victory through floral centerpieces and fake congratulations. A baby shower for a baby that never existed, held in the same house where I had been systematically erased. The irony would have been laughable if it hadn't been so grotesque. I spent the early hours organizing the last of my files, double-checking backups, placing physical copies in a secure manila folder that now felt heavier than it should have. Then I sat by the window and watched the guests arrive. SUVs lined the street, heels clicked against my driveway, and the hum of polite conversation buzzed through the air like bees around rotten fruit. They thought I wouldn't show. At exactly 2:17 p.m., I walked out the front door, circled to the side, and entered through the garden entrance. The house was crowded with people I barely recognized, most of them neighbors, business partners, church friends who used to smile at me but hadn't made eye contact in months. Conversations dimmed as I stepped into the foyer. I wore white, not ivory, not cream, white. A long-sleeved dress, simple, nothing dramatic, just enough to draw the right kind of attention. My face was bare, no makeup to hide what they'd done. No mask to spare them from seeing the bruises they had helped normalize. Corvin spotted me first. His shoulders tightened, jaw clenched. He walked toward me fast, voice low and urgent. "What the hell are you doing?" I stepped past him, unfazed. "Enjoying the party." Eudora's smile was already in place by the time I reached the dining room. "Levena," she said, too bright, "I thought you had plans." "I did," I replied, my tone calm. But then I realized, how could I miss a celebration in my own home? The murmurs picked up again. I scanned the room and found her. Solar. This was our first time face to face. She stood near the fireplace, a champagne flute in hand, surrounded by a group of women laughing just a little too loudly. She wore blush pink, classy, appropriate, deceitful. Her hand rested over her stomach with such convincing grace, I almost believed it myself. Almost. I approached her slowly, eyes scanning the space around her. She saw me and smiled like we were old friends. "Levena," she purred, "you made it. That's brave." Then I saw it. Her hand moved, and the light caught the ring. My ring. The wedding ring Corvin gave me 9 years ago. Custom set. Slight scratch under the band from when I dropped it on our honeymoon. I knew that ring better than I knew most people in my life, and it was on her finger. My breath didn't hitch. My hands didn't shake. I just looked at it, then at her, and leaned in. "He gave it to me," she whispered, her voice so smug it practically danced. "Said it didn't fit your finger anymore." I smiled, soft and slow. "No," I whispered back. "It fits betrayal perfectly." She blinked, the smirk faltering just slightly. "I wouldn't wear that for too long," I added. "It has a way of burning skin." She turned to say something, but I was already walking away. They had their show, their audience, their illusions. Now it was my turn. Solar returned to opening gifts. Boxes of onesies, wipes, stuffed animals, props in a performance she played beautifully. She lifted a pair of silver baby shoes, cooed like a soap actress, and the crowd clapped politely. I stepped forward. "Just wanted to drop off something too," I said, holding out the envelope. Solar hesitated. She took it. The weight in her hand wasn't heavy, but what was inside would crush her. She opened it slowly. Her smile flickered as she pulled out the paper. One sheet. A copy of a medical report from a reputable clinic. Her name. Date. 2018. Procedure. Bilateral tubal ligation. Permanent sterilization. No pregnancy. No possibility of one. The room fell silent. A breeze moved through the open window, catching the edge of the paper. Solar's fingers tightened. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Corvin grabbed the envelope from her and read it. Eudora stepped forward, but didn't speak. I turned to them calmly. "You built a life on lies," I said. "You replaced a wife, forged records, wore my ring, planned a future without a single ounce of truth." I looked around the room. Neighbors, clients, people who once called me family. "I'm just here to take my keys back." No one moved. No one breathed. Then I turned to the guests. "For those wondering, yes, this is my home," I said clearly. "And as of this moment, you're all trespassing." No one argued. Solar said nothing. Her hands were shaking. Corvin's face had drained of color. Eudora finally spoke. You're unstable, Levena. This behavior proves it. I smiled again. Then call the police. Have them remove me from my own house. We'll let the deed settle the matter. I turned and walked out, leaving behind the silence I used to drown in. Solar had no child, no truth, and now, no roof. The door closed behind me with a finality that didn't match the storm it had just shut out. I walked through the house with my heels echoing off the hardwood floors, each step cutting through the quiet like a slow metronome. No one stopped me, no one followed. They just let me leave, like a ghost, dismissed. But I wasn't the ghost. They were. Sunday evening set in with the weight of everything that had unfolded just hours before. My dress still hung loosely on my frame, the same white fabric from the baby shower. I hadn't changed out of it. I didn't want to. It reminded me that I had finally spoken louder than their lies. I locked the front door and checked every window, not because I feared someone breaking in, but because I knew Corvin wouldn't come through that door with a smirk or a speech. He'd come in with a plan. And he always preferred to strike from behind a wall, not face to face. The house, though still technically mine, felt unfamiliar again. The air was heavier. Every silence held an accusation. Every creak of the old staircase made me wonder if I was still alone. I didn't turn on the lights. Instead, I sat in the living room, folder in hand, laptop nearby. I was mid-email draft when I heard it. A knock at the door. Sharp. Measured. Not frantic. 3 seconds passed before a second round, more insistent this time. I walked to the front, looked through the peephole, and felt my stomach tighten. 2 officers. I opened the door slowly. Evening, I said. Ma'am, one of them began. We received a wellness report from a licensed therapist, claimed you may be at risk of harming yourself or others. My mouth stayed still, but my heart dropped. What? I asked quietly, eyes flicking between the 2 men. They didn't enter. Not yet. One pulled out a notepad. We're not here to escalate anything. We just need to check in. Standard protocol when mental health concerns are flagged. This therapist said you've been unstable, erratic. I stood silent. The irony was almost laughable. I'm not the one who needs help, I said, keeping my voice even. But I suppose that's what unstable people usually say, right? The taller officer shifted uncomfortably. You mind if we come in for a moment? I stepped aside. They scanned the room briefly. Nothing out of place, no broken objects, no weapons, just a woman standing in her own house, cornered by a lie dressed up as concern. I'm fine, I said. I have documentation you may want to see. I handed them a printed summary I had prepared after learning how Corvin and Eudora operated. It included screenshots of the fake diary entries, bank records, the forged invitation list, and a list of names who had witnessed harassment in public. This is retaliation, I added calmly. For what I revealed earlier today, someone is trying to discredit me before I get the chance to speak louder. The officers took the documents. They didn't arrest me. They didn't even ask to take me in for evaluation. They just left with a, "We'll make a note of this. If anything changes, call us." I shut the door behind them, bolted it, and sat on the couch. A wellness check. They were getting desperate, but they weren't finished. That night, I opened a new search tab and tried to access the website for Dr. Kessia Noor, the doctor who had helped me expose Solar's sterilization. The site was gone. Domain expired. Every medical record I had saved? Still on my drive. But the clinic's phone number had been disconnected. Their social media accounts vanished. Gone. All of it. I grabbed my keys, threw on a coat, and got in the car. The drive to the clinic was 15 minutes, but it felt like an hour. I parked across the street and stared at the building, windows dark. Door boarded up. A "for lease" sign hung crookedly from the glass. No forwarding address, no explanation. They weren't just trying to discredit me now. They were wiping the truth off the face of the earth, burning every bridge between me and the evidence I had fought to gather. I sat in the driver's seat, hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes locked on the building like it might suddenly blink back to life. But it didn't. They were burying me, quietly, legally, efficiently, not with fists, but with erasure. I drove home without turning on the radio. My thoughts were loud enough. By the time I pulled into the driveway, night had swallowed the neighborhood. Inside, I moved with focus. Every file on my laptop was backed up twice, once on a cloud drive under a dummy name, and once on an external hard drive I kept hidden in the crawl space behind the pantry. I duplicated everything onto a third flash drive and sealed it in an envelope labeled, "In case something happens to me." Then I made 2 copies of that envelope. One went into the glove box of my car. The second, I dropped off at Ms. Lita's house, slipped it through the mail slot just after midnight. She didn't need to know what was in it, just that if anyone asked about me, she had the truth. When I got back, I sat in the dark living room and whispered aloud, just to feel the words exist in the air. If they want to bury me, I'll become the graveyard of their lies. I wasn't scared anymore. I was ready. You want war, Corvin? I'll bring the fire. The morning sunlight spilled across the bedroom floor, quiet and unbothered. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands resting in my lap, no bruises to cover today. For the first time in a long while, the reflection staring back at me in the mirror didn't flinch. I whispered to the silence, "Let's make today Solar's." By mid-afternoon, I was standing in the hallway outside the county courthouse. No entourage, no supportive family at my side, just me, holding a manila envelope in one hand and a flash drive tucked safely in my purse. My spine was straight, my breath steady. I didn't walk in like a victim. I walked in like someone who had already won. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with low voices. The benches were lined with familiar faces, neighbors, clients, former church acquaintances. Eudora sat stiffly in the second row, her hands perfectly still on her lap. Corvin stood by his attorney, jaw clenched so tight the vein in his neck looked ready to burst. Solar sat next to him, noticeably paler than usual, her hand resting protectively over a stomach that everyone now knew was just another part of the performance. They didn't look at me as I walked past them to the plaintiff's table, but I could feel their eyes. My attorney stood, introduced me, and handed over the flash drive. "Your Honor," she began, "what you are about to see and hear will not only dismantle the narrative the defendants have attempted to create, it will expose a coordinated attempt to destroy my client's credibility, her marriage, and her livelihood." The judge nodded, and the screen flickered to life. First up was the DNA test. A clean, indisputable result. Corvin was not the father of Solar's child. I didn't look at him as it was read aloud, but I heard his sharp inhale, saw the shift in Solar's posture, her fingers suddenly pulling at the hem of her dress like it might save her. Next came the financial records, charges made with our joint account, jewelry, hotel rooms, wellness centers, all attached to Solar's name or initials. Some used my name, some used insurance codes assigned to me. The courtroom was silent except for the click of the slideshow advancing. Then came the therapist emails. The man who had once told me I was making progress had sent an alert to authorities days after Eudora's donation hit his clinic's records. The emails were clear. Fabricated concern flagged with strategic timing, used to justify a wellness check meant to remove me from my own home under the guise of mental instability. And then, finally, the recording. The conversation captured from the vent near the kitchen. Corvin, Eudora, and Solar. Solar's voice, unmistakable. "We just need to move her out quietly. A 72-hour hold, make it look like care." Eudora. "She's got no one. She's isolated herself. She'll fold." Corvin. "The court will believe us. We're the respectable ones." The judge paused the recording halfway through and turned to the defense. "Do you wish to respond?" Corvin's lawyer stood, flustered. This is a matter of miscommunication and misinterpretation. These are private conversations." The judge raised a hand. "Actually, it changes everything." Corvin's face flushed red. He turned to Solar, but she wouldn't meet his gaze. Her hand dropped from her stomach like she had suddenly remembered the charade wasn't required anymore. Eudora stood up and walked out of the courtroom. Just like that, she didn't look back. Solar swayed slightly in her seat and fainted, right there in the courtroom. The paramedics were called. She was helped out by 2 strangers. Nobody moved to follow her. And I remained seated, silent. After the ruling, reporters began circling the courthouse steps. Someone took a photo of me standing alone, the same manila envelope in hand. The caption later read, "Charleston wife exposes legacy of lies." The image spread quickly. By that evening, it was everywhere. I didn't comment. I didn't need to. The next morning, Corvin's contracts began unraveling. Clients who had been friends for years were suddenly unreachable. His showroom faced public backlash. The community he had once called loyal began to treat him like a disease they didn't want to catch. His mother's social circle shrank overnight. Her name was no longer whispered with reverence. It was spoken like a cautionary tale. And Solar? Her accounts were deactivated. She had disappeared. Just like her fabricated pregnancy. People on social media called me a warrior, a survivor, the wife who fought back. But I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just trying to survive. I didn't burn it down. I just showed everyone the fire. Justice doesn't heal the wound, but it stops the bleeding. The rain started around 5 in the morning, soft at first, then steady, like a hush blanketing the world. I didn't mind it. The sound reminded me of who I had become, not the woman who once flinched at every slammed door or quiet accusation, but someone who could sit in silence without feeling swallowed by it. I lay in bed longer than usual, not because I was avoiding the day, but because I no longer feared what it might bring. The sheets were smooth beneath me, unwrinkled by another body. No footsteps thundered down the hallway. No voice barked from the kitchen asking where the keys were or why the coffee tasted off. Just the tap of rain against the window and the sound of my own breathing, quiet, steady, unhurried. When I finally stepped out of bed, I didn't rush. I walked barefoot across the cool floor, wrapped myself in a soft gray sweater, and made my way to the kitchen. I brewed a single cup of coffee, no longer needing to account for someone else's preferences. 1 sugar, a splash of cream. That was enough. This house, mine again, had a new kind of quiet now. Not the oppressive silence that used to creep down the walls like mold. No, this quiet was sacred. It was space. It was breath. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the mail I'd ignored over the past few days. Bills, a church newsletter, a letter with no return address, the envelope handwritten. I knew the writing. Kessia. Inside was a single page. Levena. You reminded me why I became a doctor. You reminded me that truth is only worth something when someone's brave enough to stand behind it. You reminded me of my mother. She stayed too long, too. Thank you. I hope you remind others why they deserve to live free. KN. I held the letter for a while, eyes closed, just letting the words settle inside me. I placed it in the drawer next to the stove, not out of sight, but somewhere it could stay without needing to be stared at. Mid-morning, I got dressed. Nothing special. Just jeans and a navy blouse. I pulled my hair back in a simple ponytail, put on lip balm, and slipped on flats. Then I drove to the prison. The road was wet, streaked with silver from the overcast sky. My hands didn't shake on the wheel. My heart didn't race. I wasn't going to see him for closure. I wasn't going for peace. I was going to look him in the eye and show him what survival looked like. The visitation room was cold, all metal and echo. I sat at the table and waited, fingers laced together in front of me. Corvin walked in wearing beige. His hair was shorter, his eyes a little more hollow, but he still carried that same smugness in his shoulders, like he thought this was all temporary, like the world would one day apologize for misunderstanding him. He sat across from me, silent. "Why are you here?" he finally asked. I met his eyes, steady and still. "To show you I survived," I said, "and that you didn't break me." He didn't speak, just stared. "You wanted to bury me," I continued. "But I grew roots instead." A muscle twitched in his jaw. "I'm not here to forgive you. I'm not here for anything you could possibly give me. I'm here to make sure the last version of me you see is the one that walked through hell and came out holding the matches." "I don't care what you think," he muttered, voice low. "I know," I said, rising from the table. "But I do. And that's new." I left without looking back. Outside, the rain had lightened to a mist. I stood in the parking lot for a moment, face tilted to the sky. Not because it was poetic, or because I wanted anyone to see me, just because it felt right to feel the rain and not flinch. Over the next 2 weeks, I didn't go back to court, didn't watch the civil suits unfold. I heard about them, sure. Solar's fraud cases, Eudora being removed from the charity board she had chaired for over a decade, the bank pulling out of Corvin's dealership agreement. It was happening, not quickly, not all at once, but it was happening. I started writing again. At night, after dinner, I'd sit by the window with a glass of tea and a pen in hand. Not about him, not about them, but about me. About what healing looked like when it wasn't performative. About what survival meant when it wasn't about escaping, but about rebuilding. I didn't date, didn't look for someone to fix me. Didn't need anyone to tell me I was whole. Some people sent flowers, some called, most just watched from a distance, unsure of what to say. And that was fine. I didn't need anyone to tell me I had done the right thing. I knew. Some mornings I would walk to the corner bakery. The woman who ran it used to give me half smiles, pitying ones. Now, she handed me my coffee and said, "You're stronger than most people I know." I'd nod, say thank you, and walk back home. The house still creaked. The roof still leaked when it rained too long. But it was mine again, and so was I. I used to think being a good wife meant staying, that it meant enduring, fixing, silencing myself to protect someone else's image. I thought love was about sacrifice, that loyalty meant putting their needs above mine. But now I know better. Now I know that being a good woman means leaving when staying is killing you. I didn't burn the bridge, I just chose not to walk back across it. Sometimes, the strongest thing a woman can do is walk away without a word and never look back. Levena's story isn't just about betrayal, it's about reclaiming your voice when the world tries to silence it. So let me ask you, have you ever stayed too long in a place that slowly erased you? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful, true-to-life stories just like this one.